Welcome back to Allowed to Ask, a First Rounds on Media production. We know the dating scene can be tough, especially when you're being intentional and the people you're matching with aren't. That's why it's important to use apps designed for people who are serious about dating with purpose. First Rounds on Me gets it right. From having to plan the date in order to match to a 24-hour chat feature and curated date spots suggested by other users on the app, it's all about helping you build meaningful connections from the start. Try it out and use code A2A, capital A, number 2, capital A, for a free month of their subscription. We are so excited to be sitting here with Natassia Miller, who's the founder and sexologist, I can't even say that word, sexologist.
Yeah. You did it.
At Wonderlust. You have years of experience learning and understanding what it takes to create a genuinely happy and fulfilling sex life. Yes, we are talking about sex today. Dad, tune out now while you can. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you. We actually have never, I honestly, to be honest, like I knew they were like sex therapist, but I didn't know it was called like a sexologist.
Yeah, so sexologists study human sexuality, and they can be therapists, researchers, coaches. So it's a wide umbrella.
Are you all the above?
I'm a coach and an educator. Yeah, so that was the fourth one that I missed.
Love.
Yes, yes.
How did you get into this?
So my mom actually always talked to me about sex. And
met her?
She was very open about it. So, but not in an inappropriate way.
Yeah.
It was always like starting with naming my genitals with the correct terminology, which I later learned is really important for you to be able to own your pleasure. If you say the word clitoris, you are more likely to have orgasms.
I love we're already like 30 seconds in and we already said the word clitoris. That's never happened here before. I love it. Wait, elaborate on that. I don't know if I'm fully following.
So she always allowed me to feel comfortable in my body, and in the beginning taught me more about safety. Like people shouldn't touch you inappropriately in certain ways. If something happens, like you tell me, you know, as a kid, right?
Were you 11 or 8 or?
Oh no, I was probably around like 6.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah, very, very young.
Why was she so into this talk?
Because childhood sexual abuse is very common. And so she was just always very open about like making sure that I was safe.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah. And then later on, as I became a teenager, she was always very open about making sure that I knew how to wear a condom, you know, having condoms, like being safe in, I had a long-term relationship when I was in high school. So I knew that I was going to lose my virginity to him. And so I told her beforehand.
Yeah.
And we went to the gynecologist. And so it was all very, you know, very open and very safe.
Right. Maybe we needed your mom here because I'm very open and we've gone through that whole road, but I never she never came home and I'm like, so did you have an orgasm?
No. Yeah. And
I mean, to be fair, my mom did not ask that specifically.
Yeah, that's like crazy.
So is he good?
Yeah. I don't think that's what she's saying, you wild freak over there. But what was your reaction when you were like 6 years old and your mom's talking about like an orgasm? Were you like,
oh, no, my mom wasn't talking about an orgasm.
Then she was talking about body parts.
Body
and
parts.
like, nobody should
were
touch
you like,
you.
were you like, oh my God, like, were you, because I feel like kids, like the relationship with the mother, daughter, and parents, like, it's like a two-way street. So some kids might be like, oh my God, mom, stop.
Well, actually, everything that's related to sex starts with disgust, right? If you think about it, the first time you ever hear about anything that's related to your body or to sex, you're like, gross, people do that. Like the first time you hear that in order to make a baby, like a penis goes into a vaginal canal, you're like, what? Why do people do that, right? So it's
true.
normal. Yes, I did have the disgust response.
Yeah.
You should actually write a children's book.
You know, there are a few good ones.
Because that would be a good way to explain it to kids. I missed that. Sorry. I think I discussed every other topic, but that's great of your mom. I like that.
Yeah.
But how did you get into it? Like, did you graduate college and be like, ooh, sex?
No.
Ooh, sex.
So I actually, when I graduated from college, I worked in finance for most of my 20s because my family worked in finance and I really didn't feel fulfilled by what I was doing. So going through my Saturn return, when I was 29, I decided that I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had for years listened to How I Built This by Guy Raz, the podcast, and just always so inspired. And I love the world of wellness. And so I decided to partner with a friend of mine who I went to college with to start a fitness app. She had developed a movement modality that was focused on body neutrality and about how you feel and movement and longevity.
I love that.
But we launched right before COVID hit in a very saturated marketplace. And long story short, it didn't work. A year and a half later, I was reflecting on what I wanted to do next. And my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, was like, well, you have always been so open about sex and you have an ease in talking about it.
Yeah.
And I was reading all of these different books around sexuality, and I noticed that there's an opportunity in the sexual wellness market where it's not saturated yet. You had brands that came in to rebrand, Mod, Dame, all of these that made all of these products.
That was my first vibrator.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
And then I actually applied for a job there too. And they never got my internship. I was like, all right, you rejected me, but I will buy a vibrator from you.
Yeah. And so I saw this opportunity and I combined something that I'm really curious about with the timing. And I actually launched as an e-commerce company with an intimacy card deck to help couples talk about sex.
Yes, I saw that, which is so great.
So good.
Yeah. I mean, frankly, we did a survey with over 500 couples to understand what was preventing them from having better sex, and communication was at the heart of it.
Right.
And today I work with clients one-on-one and it's always about communication.
Right.
And I wanted to create a product that was both accessible and fun, but also beautiful. And that's why I started with the intimacy card deck.
How do you bring up because I know like having a conversation with your partner about intimacy could be tough. So how do you even bring up, like I know the cards would help. Or uncomfortable. How do you bring up the conversation like to play this card game? I feel like that would be the same level of like someone being uncomfortable.
You can introduce it as like a date night, event.
Yeah.
And so it's basically an opportunity for you to pull out the cards and get to know each other better emotionally, relationally. So there are 2 different levels of 69 cards each. And the
69.
First,
Clever.
Took the words out of my mouth, Mom.
And the first level is more romantic and the second level is spicier. So there is like a natural progression for you to not dive into
the most sexual thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just a really fun experience. So today card games have become more mainstream, right? And I think it just becomes a more easy, natural progression for you to introduce that as like, let's try something different. And there's so many different cards that if you pull something out and it doesn't vibe with you, you can just set it aside and move on to the next.
Right.
But it's the card that asks the question, not you. So the beauty of it is that it takes the pressure off of your back and it helps guide the conversation.
Very true.
And I created it with long-term couples in mind, but my single friends who've purchased it, they've played it on like the first few dates and they're like, wow, you open up about things that you never would. And so you get to know what the other person enjoys. And like, it's just a natural aphrodisiac when you're talking about the things that turn you on or what attracted you to the other person. And so it just leads to really hot sex early on in dating.
Right.
Love that.
Are they illustrated?
So one side, I partnered with my friend who's an artist, and one side has more erotic illustrations, but it's not for you to mimic the illustrations. I've gotten people to ask me that too. On the other side are the prompts. It's just really to be like a beautiful, experiential product.
Yeah. I'm sure they're doing amazing because I've never heard of anything like this.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank
you used to
you.
do dating card games, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are other intimacy card games, but what I felt like, there are none that are as
sounds like
artful
backed.
as exactly as mine. And also I wanted to combine both the more romantic with the sexual.
Right.
And I felt like there was the card decks that go into the sexual stuff. It's only a couple.
Right. And it probably goes like 0 to 100. It's like, what's your favorite
you must
color?
have fun doing it though.
Yeah.
That is really fun. So what would you say is a very common issue that, your clients come to you about? Do you find a lot of, oh, sorry. Do you find, still your question, do you find a lot of like similarities, or are you constantly learning about like new things that people are struggling with that you need to like do research on?
Lots of similarities. People are struggling with low desire across the board. And
Men and women?
Men and women, yes. So far, what I've met with my clients specifically are with women in the relationships. But that's generally because the woman tends to bear the mental load so much more than the man does. And there's all that invisible labor that goes on in the household, especially if you have kids.
I get it.
That the guy is just not aware of or willing to step in to the same extent. And so part of the work, as unsexy as it sounds, but actually excites a lot of women, is, okay, what are all of the to-dos that you guys have?
Right.
And how can you, separate these better and divide them? And what can you actually delegate?
Right.
Outsource to a virtual assistant who can do anything that can be done online, booking medical appointments, summer camp, whatever it is.
Like taking things off your plate.
Taking things off your plate. And how can you also maybe hire the cleaner for the house if you don't have one yet.
Right.
And other forms of you lightening the load so that you can have more time to be together one-on-one, because
right. And not be exhausted.
And not be exhausted.
At the end of the day, I mean, yes, a man works hard and they're in the office all day, but
well, that's also you just be with your gender role.
My gender roles, right.
Well, no, but actually they've done studies and they've shown that even when both partners work, and even in cases when the woman makes more money than the man, she still puts in more hours at home.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, I did all the it's
pink jobs or whatever you want to say.
No, my friend Rachel, she's married. I mean, I'm young, I'm 28, but she's like, yeah, we call them pink jobs and blue jobs, like making the bed, pink job, taking out the garbage, like blue job,
right.
And I think. Yeah,
you're right. With those. Right. So, Dad took care of outside stuff and garbage, but it's still as a mom, it's great and it's rewarding and it's the best job out there, but it's a lot of work. And you're never not thinking.
Well, it's also crazy how your day-to-day life, what you're saying is reflective of how your relationship in the bedroom is. If you're so tired, I guess it makes sense. If you're so tired from your day-to-day and you have so many things to do and you're thinking about all the things you have to do, you're not going to forget about those things when you're trying to be intimate.
Right.
Yeah,
and exactly. A guy's always raring and ready to go.
Yeah.
Is that true though?
100%.
Well,
let's ask the sexologist here.
What happens is testosterone levels definitely impact your ability to get in the mood, so to speak, more easily, right? They naturally have much higher levels than we have. But it really depends on the desire styles. For example, in my relationship, stress actually is a libido booster for me, whereas for my husband, it completely turns him off. And so I naturally end up initiating more often, because if we're both stressed, I'll want it more than he'll want it. Right.
Well, he must love that.
He's like, are you stressed?
He probably tries to stress you out all day, push your buttons and then you get home.
Well, actually for him, it can be a little bit of a nuisance, because he's we're both, really stressed and at the end of the day, exhausted.
Right.
So,
and he doesn't want to do anything when he's stressed and you're get over here.
Yeah, exactly. So it really depends on, it's really learning how you function and what are the things, what are your accelerators and your brakes, which are the two things that determine your desire style, frankly. So when you get to know yourself really well, then you can communicate better with each other and understand when is the right time to initiate, what is the kind of mood setting that needs to happen in order for this to be successful. And foreplay begins when the last time you had sex ends. So a huge problem that, especially in long-term relationships and in straight relationships, because obviously we've been talking very gendered roles, is that there won't be that cultivation of that emotional connection on a daily basis. And so then the guy will turn around and be like, hey, want to have sex? And, it could be at the worst possible moment. And the woman is going to turn around and be like, you haven't even spoken to me properly yet. What makes you think that I'd be open for this? Right?
I want to go into what you said about how you have to get comfortable with yourself. I think a lot of people are probably shy, individuals, introverts, which not all introverts are shy, but how do you recommend people even get comfortable with themselves before they have to voice something to a partner, whether they're single or in a relationship?
Right. So getting comfortable with their own bodies.
Right. And what they like. How do people how do you recommend people explore what is right for them before, so they can actually bring that to a partner.
Self-pleasure.
Okay, I thought that was the answer.
Yeah.
That's very important, especially for women, because men grow up with that allowance of, you can touch yourself and play with your penis and, it's also outward. And so it's just, they have
there.
a different, it's there, right? And a woman is told to protect herself.
True.
And that she should, whether it's indirect or directly, she'll hear that she should be ashamed of her vulva. And she's actually probably not even taught that it's called a vulva, it's a vagina, which you're completely erasing the language of an important part of your anatomy.
It's such a good point. Like, we're like taught to like protect it, and like this is our temple right here.
Absolutely.
Like,
and the double standards, right? Like a man can have sex with whomever, but you as a woman need to make sure
you're tamed. Yeah.
That you're tamed. And so everything sets you up for feeling uncomfortable in your own body and frankly feeling proud of your genitals, which men are taught to be, and women haven't even looked at themselves in the mirror.
Oh, I did. Remember when I had to put a mirror underneath my vajiji because like I remember there's a whole thing when you're younger. It's like put a mirror underneath and start to like explore yourself.
I don't remember anybody telling me that.
Well, it was also knowing like how to put in a tampon.
Yeah. Right. That was
a tampon.
Yeah, that's also something weird. But it's actually funny. I remember going back to my first vibrator. It was like a buy one, get one. It was like a Cyber Monday situation.
Who'd you give it the second one to?
That's the point of my story. I'm not saying who I gave it to, but I gave the other vibrator to my friend. And like she's never explored herself before. And I was like, just try it. Like, I think you're going to love it. And then we all went to our beds after whatever. And the next morning she came down. I was like, so how was it? And I was like, I swear I gave my best friend her first orgasm without touching her.
Like I was so open with everything, but I would never be like, oh, here, I bought you a vibrator.
My mom did not buy me a vibrator, for the record.
That would be over the top weird. Yeah. I'm so glad you did.
Right now, this is a joke. One day, if I'm ever a grandma, I'll be like, for the bat mitzvah, oh, I bought you a gold-plated vibrator. Here you go.
I love that. Also, though, I don't think it's weird now that I'm in the position that I'm in.
Yeah.
There's this author called Rebecca Wolf. She wrote an incredible book called All of This. She lost her husband to cancer, but it also at the same time made her really horny. And there's like all of this duality that a woman, especially a widower, shouldn't feel. A widow, sorry, what shouldn't feel. And so she writes beautifully about it, but she has a Substack called Sex and the Single Mom. And in it, she writes about how when her son, I guess was like 16 or 17, she bought him the book Becoming Clitorate, which is like the guide to female pleasure. And told him to read it so that he can become a good lover. And when her daughters were around the same age, she got them vibrators because she's like, everybody's horny. We don't want to admit it because we don't want to sexualize our kids. But this isn't sexualizing. This is giving them the tools for them to feel more comfortable in their bodies. They're already processing so much.
Yeah. That's why I never understood why parents were like, I understand like there's a boundary of like talking about things when it comes to sex, but I never understood when parents were like, you can't have sex. Like you can't have sex until like a certain age, or like, I never understood that. Like you were a kid once too. Like you were experiencing the same thing that your kids are experiencing. Why are you putting a kind of a halt to things when they're quote unquote growing up and learning about themselves?
Sometimes parents just feel like they have to be parental, like you're not doing this now. Or
but saying you can't have sex,
you're worried about safety. It comes from a place of love,
We always said like the parents that were so like strict with their kids with like drinking and going out and sex, whatever. The second they went to college, they were the biggest druggies, sleeping with everyone who had a pulse, and like,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I used to say, what did I used to say?
Everything in moderation.
Yeah, everything in moderation. Sometimes I said, but nothing now.
Yeah.
Aside from the card game, how do you recommend people can open up about this conversation with their partner? I think it's something that could be very uncomfortable. So what would you recommend as a way to bring that up without offending the person?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, if you can early on in the relationship and dating, you can start talking about sex in a way that puts it also in a lighter format so that it's not always tied to improvement necessarily or like something negative.
Right.
So you can share like, oh, I really enjoyed it when you did this, or, you know, we had a great time doing XYZ. Like that really turned me on. So you get into the habit of already opening up about sex regularly, about the positive things, so that when you need to bring up something that you want to change or maybe that you want to explore, but you're worried about how your partner is going to react.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel so unnatural, like it's coming out of left field. We never talk about sex.
Right.
That being
So
said,
it doesn't alarm them.
yeah, if you're coming from a place where you never talk about sex, what you can say is, and there are a few different ways. There's like the very indirect way where you can send a podcast or an article or, you know, a Netflix series like Goop Sex Love has a bunch of different episodes and be like, hey, I heard this and I thought this part was interesting and I'd love to talk to you about it. Or, you know, would this interest you to explore, you know? And so you start sending feelers out that can feel a little bit less pressure. You're maybe sending it by text. The person has an opportunity to process and respond. But I also recommend that if you come up to them personally, you can say, listen, I want to make sure that we're both really fulfilled in our sex life. And I realize that we just never talk about it. And I heard that, you know, communicating about sex allows a couple to have a richer sex life. So when would you be open to sitting down and talking about it?
I can imagine people would have a very hard time bringing up that conversation.
So is that the number one thing your clients come to you for?
Well,
and you do couples, or you just like the wife calls or the girlfriend calls?
I've had both situations, but in general, I see people who are coupled. Yeah, I haven't met with somebody who's single yet. And I mean, most of my audience and the clients at Wonderlust, they're generally straight. They've been together for 16 plus years. They are 35 plus. We have 1/3 of our demographic is 55 plus.
Wow.
They're married with kids. So that's generally the population that I'm dealing with.
And a lot of it could just be that life gets in the way.
Yes, life gets in the way. People are tired. And one thing that we didn't touch on, but it's technology, right? Like we are constantly on our phones. And from the moment we wake up, we're on, you know, an app, and that depletes our dopamine levels consistently throughout the day. So when you come home, you're so exhausted that they did a study to understand what our attention levels are. And so if you're in an office, generally, you're focused for an average of 11 minutes before you're interrupted by a phone call, an email, a tap on the shoulder.
Only 11 minutes?
Yes. And it takes you 25 minutes to focus again after that.
Wow.
That makes a lot of sense to my day. Even like working from home, like I sit and I do something and then like, it's actually kind of crazy because I do social media work. So when I go on my phone, like for example, like doing questions for this episode, like I went on Instagram to go to your profile to like just think of some questions and obviously get to know you more. I found myself in a rabbit hole in like some jewelry brand based in Barcelona. I'm like, and then I was like, what am I doing here right now? And I was like, oh, I'm looking at Natassia. Like, it's crazy how you can get so sidetracked, whether it's like my business partner texts me, there goes everything I was working on for the next hour.
Exactly.
Like that's so scary.
So imagine if it takes you 25 minutes to focus on something as banal as a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Imagine during sex.
Right.
So we are having such a hard time decompressing at the end of the day that it's the chances of you being able to decompress enough for you to get into an erotic mindset are really, really low.
And there's probably also scenarios where like people really only get turned on when the other person initiates it.
Well, also, with gendered roles, women have been taught that they shouldn't pursue, that they should be pursued. So for them, it can feel really antithetical to what they've been taught as a role as a woman.
Right. That's more my generation probably than your
Would
generation.
love for her to have met with Sherry, the girl we had on the podcast. Who was
my
so,
God.
you guys are like polar opposites. She was very like men always approach, blah, blah, blah. But right, that's interesting. So what would you say, what would you recommend to like a woman if she you know, wants to have more intimacy with her partner, but really only feels more interested if they initiate it? Like how can they How can she
you can
approach
have
that?
an open conversation of why.
Oh, it goes back to communication.
It does. It's why does having your partner initiate all the time turn you on?
Right.
Because it's not about the content, it's about the why behind the content. And then people don't talk about it. So then the husband's like, I'm always the one who initiates and I want to feel desired too.
Right.
Why can't she initiate? And then you start understanding, like, if you had an open conversation, like, I actually have a really hard time initiating because it feels unnatural to me. I like being pursued. I was taught to be that way growing up. And so there's a lot of unraveling for me to do if we were to switch these roles. And it honestly just really turns me on. Now your husband or, your partner has an insight that he didn't have before. And he's like, oh, interesting.
Right. It's not like I'm doing the work. It's like she likes when I do the work.
Exactly. So I think, if you want to continue in that lane, that's a really important conversation for you to have because now your partner understands you better. Right.
So true.
Oh, it's great. It's really great what you do.
Is there anything that you're married, right?
Yeah.
That maybe this is like TMI, but I don't know. Is there anything you and like your husband do to like keep the sparks flying?
Yes. We touch a lot.
Oh, I love to touch.
Yeah.
We do. And that is so important because you start meeting with couples and you understand that, especially long term, how little they touch each other.
Right.
They might not ever kiss. Or rarely kiss. They don't give each other a hug when they come home. They're not cuddling at the end of the day. Like there is no physical touch. And the physical touch allows you to keep that natural connection going. And it's such a great way for you to reduce stress at the end of the day. It's like, I got you. Right.
Like, what about even
but he doesn't want to reduce your stress. He likes you when
he likes to stress because then he gets it.
No hugs for you today.
No hugs for you today. Exactly.
What about people who are like anti-PDA? I think there's obviously a range of PDA. You don't want to be like making out instantly at a bar, but like I'm always a fan of like the light leg hold, like arm around your shoulder. Like, do you think those things also enhance?
I do, but I think that if it's in public, I understand that's a different beast, so to speak. So it's really about cultivating it in your private home.
Got it.
Like, how are you interacting behind closed doors? And that's just something that people are really missing. And so we make out every day. Oh, I'm not kidding.
When he comes
home, we make out, and it's like
so cute. You have like a little,
but we keep that. But the making out is something that we forget to do, right? Like in the beginning, you're always making out, and then like years in, you're like, making
out sounds like you're actually 16. Like and you just left a basement party and had a warm beer.
So when he comes home from work, you just have like a little kissing session?
I give him, because I work from home. And so generally I'm there when he arrives. I give him a hug and we make out, and then we go into the kitchen and like we're catching up and genuinely listening to each other. At the end of the day, people want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. They want to feel alive and they want to feel desired. And that's how you cultivate eroticism in your relationship. Because eroticism, we always think about sex, but really it's just, it's that strong creative energy, the aliveness, the vitality. So how do you keep that going in your relationship?
And people also want to feel respected, like what they do in their time and their work. And
I was going to ask, like, what is... And you're prompting me to go there around like how to keep things intimate outside of just sex. Like, right. So you're saying like touch lightly, make out, but also like, right, ask the questions, listen when they get home from work, like be engaging. I love that you guys do that. My boyfriend's so screwed. We're going to make out every time he gets home from work.
There you go.
He might kill me, but no.
No, in the beginning, it can feel a little awkward, and then you'll get into the nature of it because you're like, God, this feels really good, actually. Right. Like it reminds me of why we're together in like a very small way on a daily basis.
Yeah.
No, I think that's great. I do think it's fun. It's not funny, but it's really cute.
Yeah. Well, the word make out is just like hooking up.
Smooch.
A little smooch. What would you say for someone who's maybe had just like a bunch of bad sexual experiences? I'm not saying like abuse. I don't want to go that route. Just more like constantly not satisfied with their experiences in bed, whether they're... I'm going to actually lean it more towards like if you're single and you're dating and you're getting to know someone.
Yeah. So going back to self-pleasuring, like masturbate, get to know your body really well, alternate between using a vibrator and using your finger a cappella, like, you know, touch yourself in other parts of your body to also see how you enjoy touch that's outside of your genitals, and let yourself, like, learn how to stimulate your imagination. Something I always like to say is that your brain is your largest sexual organ. And so that's another thing that makes it really hard for us to connect with our erotic self on a daily basis, because we're like in this such a logical world of productivity.
Right.
But you need to allow yourself to fantasize, maybe listen to audio erotica or read
I was going to say, are you a fan of porn?
Well, I prefer listening or reading. Reading, I love.
What's your favorite naughty book? I love a good like thriller sexual novel.
So it's funny because it's not, I don't actually read like pure literary erotica.
It's just like
there's
in
the genre. But there's a book called Three Women. And
Three Women.
Yeah.
I have it on my list, but I didn't know that was like they have like some moments.
They get into very specific sex scenes, and that, like, my husband would be sleeping because he wakes up so much earlier than I do, and I'd be reading in bed next to him, and I'd be like, "Wake up!" Yeah, and it I think for women who might feel like porn is too aggressive, try to find alternative forms that stimulate your imagination and your fantasies. And I hear from a lot of women, like, I just don't fantasize about anything. There's nothing that comes to mind. And part of it, I think, is not exploring what could turn you on.
Right, they're not
But
putting themselves
also
on.
part of it is like, you don't need to be, you know, tied from the ceiling and like getting spanked from all sides. Like, that is not what a fantasy needs to be. Like, a fantasy can be something as simple as you had 8 hours of sleep and you wake up and you're well rested and your husband comes up from behind you and kisses you gently on the neck and like maybe slowly moves his hand down along your thighs. And you're like imagining that and you're like, oh, that's hot. Like,
right.
That's
It doesn't
your
need to be the
fantasy,
craziest thing in the world.
And then you share that with your partner.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know, but that's the thing. Like, we just repress ourselves so much.
Yeah, that's the word.
Repress. Well, people probably think there's a lot of shame around it too, like being a woman talking about that, which is like the sad part.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you help clients determine if their fantasies or desires are normal or if they're like creepy and out of line?
No, there's no such thing as creepy or out of line. Truly.
I love that answer, honestly.
Yes. Whatever's going on in your mind is totally okay. And you need if you want to work with a professional on accepting whatever it is that you are fantasizing about, that's one thing.
Right.
Now, where you want to make sure that it's consensual and pleasurable for everybody involved is when you decide to get it out of your head and practice it in real life. Because not everything we actually want to come to life with our fantasies, right? Like, maybe you want to get slapped around by an octopus and that really turns you on. Like, that's not a reality for you, right? So
it's valid, but not.
Or you're imagining maybe group sex, but you think about it and you're like, I don't actually want to bring a third or fourth person into bed with, you know, my husband or my wife or whatever. Like, it's just in your mind that really turns you on. But when you think about bringing it to life, it doesn't.
It doesn't work.
So, and that's fine. Like, you can have it in your, and that's the beauty of it. You can keep it to yourself. You don't need to always share everything with your partner.
Right.
But when you do want to bring it to life, then that's the thing. Like, you need to make sure there is nothing that is freaky or that is wrong if it is consensual and pleasurable for everybody involved.
Period.
Great answer.
So do you think there's such thing as like a low libido, or it's just lack of understanding?
It's all relative.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all relative. Yeah.
Okay.
Because low compared to what, right? Like,
That's
is it
true.
compared to your partner, or did you used to have a higher libido when you were younger? And, you know, and are you bothered by it because other people are telling you that you should be
Interesting.
bothered by it, or because it's something that's genuinely, like, internally you want to feel maybe more alive with erotic energy again, right? And so then depending on what might be impacting that low libido, and there's so many different things, then there's a ton of different exercises that you can work through to help stimulate that again, right?
I forgot who we had on, but one of our guests said like to keep things alive and the spark alive as they planned sex. Like they planned when they were gonna
date
have sex.
nights.
But it wasn't even date night. I forgot who it was. I'll figure it out after. But she was like, we planned sex. And what are your thoughts on that around like making sure you find the time to like be intimate, but does that like ruin the, spontaneity of like being turned on at other times? Like I'm sure they're having sex outside of like their like sex night, but
Thursday night.
like, yeah, right. Like,
But when you were dating, was it spontaneous?
when I was dating with like
when you date, it's more spontaneous.
No, it's not, because you have a date that's set. So then you're like getting ready and you're imagining what's going to happen in that
Kind of
specific
true.
date that's been set, right? You have all of this opportunity
True.
to set the mood and to build the excitement.
unless you're like out and like you just have a one night stand, but like that's very valid.
Yes, but then we're not talking about the one night stand, right?
Right,
Like
of
that's,
course.
And also, it's just frankly easier to have sex with a total stranger because you don't have all of your emotions and baggages that are in the middle of it. You may not have the most incredible sex, but it can be
Right.
easier because you just have
There's
less
less.
on the line.
Yeah, I saw one of your posts where it was like women are like, I forgot the actual stat and percentage, but it was like women obviously have, sad that I'm saying, obviously have like less orgasms while they're having sex because they're overthinking things. They're like, why isn't it happening? It's taking too long. So that's like
I have to get
into
yogurt
their
in the
head.
morning,
I
my
have to get-
breakfast.
you might be thinking I have to get yogurt in the morning.
Yeah, it's like 8% of women in casual sex come, whereas 95% of men do. And
That's a wild stat.
it is, but also when I had casual sex, I wasn't coming all the time,
Yeah.
right? And by the way, you don't need to come all the time if you don't want to. Sometimes I would just get turned on by pleasuring the person that I was with.
Yeah.
But like, I think it just, the orgasm stat just speaks volumes to how we relate to pleasure in general. Because we are, even in when long-term relationships, you're married, you are very self-conscious about your body. You are self-conscious about taking too long, about how you smell, all of the different things. And so it's frankly very common for me to hear from women that their husbands have never made them come, right?
So what do you say to those clients where it's like, okay, if he's going down on you, like, how do you like release those thoughts of like, do I smell? What's going on down there? Do I look good? Like, what do you do to kind of suggest people to chill out in a way?
It's an exploration. It depends on, what they're dealing with specifically. But one is truly getting to know yourself on your own, because when you have somebody else in the room with you, you're dealing with too many factors that might be hard for you to stay present in the moment.
Right.
And then telling your partner, like, this is what I'm insecure about, and I'd really appreciate it if you would stick with me and would be patient as we explore what works for me. And if you have a partner who's going to say no, then you really need to reevaluate
The partner.
right?
It's so true. It goes back to our conversations always around dating, where it's like, if you're bringing up a concern, whether it's about you like with sex or not, and if they're alarmed by what you're bringing up, like that's not the person you want to be with. Same thing here. It's if you're talking about what you like sexually and they don't want to talk about it, that's not the person for you.
Exactly. And look, we all smell at some point in the day. So if you need to go to the bathroom and like wash yourself quickly, that's okay. But just please don't buy those supplements that tell you that your vulva is going to smell like a strawberry, because I cannot stand, like, it's your vulva is supposed to smell like your vulva, right? Like we all have like normal pH levels. We all have each our own taste. That's the beauty of it. But if you're worried about like that pungent smell that might be happening at the end of the day or after a specific workout, then just take a quick shower.
Right. I just saw something the other day when I was drying my nails at my nail salon, and it was some like special intimate lotion. Like, I'm just drying my nails at the nail salon.
No,
I'm like,
there's so many of those.
But I'm like, this is kind of like weird to be selling this like next to the
Oh, she was
lollipop.
selling it?
Yeah.
It's like, here, want this nail polish quick dry and also a bad smelling like little diffuser. Interesting. It reminds me of the story of when, can I say the story about Jordan and his ex with the pineapple? I get that one.
Yeah, who cares?
So you heard the thing, like pineapple makes your like vagina smell and taste good, blah, blah, blah. Who knows what's actually true.
Or semen too. They have that theory.
Well, apparently swallowing semen is good for your hair. So screw Well Bell and Nutrafol.
Yeah, look, wait, see?
That's disgusting. It's disgusting. But we do have good hair. Winky. Kidding. Well, no, not kidding. Anyway.
No, you both do have
Thank you.
Yeah.
But the whole like pineapple bit. So my brother, his like ex-girlfriend was at our house over the summer and she was like definitely a little bit more reserved. Won't get into her too much, but my mom came out.
She was very smart. And her friends who visited also was smart. No, so I was trying to be smart. Yes, that's what it was.
Oh, you were trying to be smart?
Yes.
Oh, jeez, Louise. Now you're going to be like, what the fuck?
I was trying to give a little.
So we were trying to be like, let's try to be a little more appropriate this weekend. Like my family's wildly inappropriate, like in a funny way, whatever. My mom brings out a bowl of pineapple to like, we were all just like sitting by the pool. And she goes, all right, girls, pineapple. You know what that means?
I have a fun fact.
Like, makes your vagina smell good or taste good.
And they just like looked at me like, huh?
She was like trying to relate to them on like a educational level.
Yeah,
but obviously it went back to like a vagina. Like,
yeah.
No, we need to loosen those friends up a little bit.
Yeah.
We were.
Right.
I would have definitely laughed.
Right.
Good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
We don't take anything too seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't even realize that we're inappropriate. We just are who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but that, you know what, that's the reason I'm the way I am, because you guys were so comfortable talking about things when I was younger.
There you go.
Yeah. But I can't, when you brought it up when we first started the episode, when you were younger with your mom, you were learning about like how it's gross that like a penis goes into a vagina, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't think I ever asked like how babies are made and like what sex is. I don't think I ever asked you
remember
that.
I always wanted to show you the picture. I have a picture of Danny's
my God.
head crowning. And I'm almost like, I want to show you the picture. She's like, I don't want to see it.
Of like, that's disgusting that you guys were like snapping photos while I'm coming out of you and being born. But like, I don't remember ever having a conversation where I'm like, what's sex? Or did we? You definitely don't remember at all.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if dad had that with Jordan.
No
my
way.
brother. No way. Like, is that like not a normal like, I know it's always in like,
but I always
movies
tried
and
to
whatnot.
teach Jordan to be respectful.
Yes.
And wear a condom.
Yeah, my mom would say when my brother went to school in the South, and I think there was like a stereotype around like women in the South.
Southern women?
Southern women have like the kid, and my brother was really young. So my mom would always say, like, if you're having sex with a girl with two names, you wear two condoms because you can't be a dad yet. And that's the epitome of her advice.
That's funny.
When it comes to your clients, like, how do you, this is probably the wrong word, but like track progress? Like, is there like a line that you stop at? Like, how do you make sure you're like making sure your clients are actually taking the advice and, you know, the lessons that you're sharing without, you know, crossing a line? How do you track progress in a way?
Well, because I do coaching,
Yeah.
it's always very action and goal oriented.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a series of exercises and homeworks that are given.
Where they get sex homework.
Yeah.
How fun.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is honestly less involved with the actual sex itself, but more about the erotic connection and also doing exercises that help you co-regulate each other, right? Because again, it goes back to the touch.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're connecting in non-sexual ways consistently, it makes getting into bed and having better sex much easier.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're coming from a place where you haven't had sex in, you know, many months and you're feeling disconnected, you can't just tell people to get into bed together, right? Like, it feels very jarring, especially for the woman who is like, I'm not even in that mindset.
It would feel like work, like another thing to do.
Exactly. And we don't want it to feel like work, right? So it's really about understanding like what they're specifically going through, how their life is structured, what are the things that are impeding them, doing the exercises and the homeworks, and having these, weekly check-ins to understand like how that's going. And I haven't had any, unhappy clients yet. So,
so cute.
Yeah. But
I guess your number one goal is to like set them free. Like they're done working with you.
Free. Yeah. I mean, that's within the container of coaching for sure. It's like you have a specific thing that you want to tackle. And if there's anything that needs to be, checked that I'm not specialized for, I will definitely outsource if there needs to be.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, is there anything like that you're not?
Intensive therapy, or you might need to go to a urologist or a gynecologist or a pelvic floor physical therapist, right? Like depending on what you're experiencing, we need to get you checked out or with a more experienced professional, and specifically what you're needing help with.
I'm picturing though parents doing their homework and like 3 kids are like knocking on the door like, why is the door locked? Like I remember my parents used to have sex. They used to lock the door and I was like,
good. I hope your parents had sex.
I know, but I was still like, ew. When I was young, like I was like, all right. But kids knocking on the door and then the mom's going, we're just doing our homework, honey.
Yeah, but I always say like when people talk about like their parents having sex, it's like not to be weird, you're sitting right here. It's like good. I hope like parents are still having sex. Like they should be. Yeah. Like it's sad that people are like ew about it. Like they shouldn't be ew about it. Like how the hell do you think you were born? Like let's not be naive here.
Yeah. But one thing that we actually didn't go into was I launched with a card deck, but then I became really passionate about the education.
Yeah.
So I went viral on TikTok and realized that like you can have all the tools in the world, but if you are not educated about how your dynamic works and what are the things that really turn you on or what are your boundaries and learning how to express that, like none of the rest is going to work, right? Yeah. So that's how I went into getting my certification. And
on the education piece though, isn't that so specific to certain people though? Or is there like larger understandings of like
of like how does desire work, right? You have your accelerators and your brakes, and these are learned over time, and context is what really helps you change. So if you enjoyed being spanked in bed, but then your boss spanks you at work, like you're going to be disgusted by your boss, but you're going to be turned on in bed. The only thing that changes about that act is the context in which it happens, right? And so if you understand like that it's absolutely normal for your desire to fluctuate over time and the different desire styles, and you're able to also understand how your anatomy works, because like you're like, what's the G spot? Like that doesn't exist. And then you learn that it actually is a place and that it doesn't need to necessarily happen through penetration, and that you need to have enough time where you're completely aroused so that your whole clitoris is engorged in blood, which when connected to the erectile tissue.
So much to learn. Jesus Christ.
In your vaginal canal, like it makes everything else so much more pleasurable. And then you are more likely to have a G-spot orgasm, right? And what are the ways in which you can touch yourself that feel more pleasurable?
What a fun thing to learn.
Right. But you know what it is? Like when you were young, I mean, I remember when I was young and we had like sex ed, all we did was laugh in the book and looking at penises. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like this is sex ed.
Yeah, nobody's really. There needs to be more of this out there, because you probably had
shame around
human sexuality.
No, I had health class and you learned
but
like
it was probably like BS
penis,
and
vagina, one goes in the other, like semen. Bye.
Yeah.
A, grade A. Like there was no like this. That's like really knowledgeable.
This is all about what we learn is all about prevention, right? There's a sex researcher, Dr. Sprinkle, who
What's his name? Sprinkle?
Sprinkle.
Oh, I thought
Sprinkle.
Okay, because my son is going to see Dr. Cox. As an okay, Dr. Sprinkle. Okay.
You make it sound like Jordan's going to a doctor like for his dick. Like he's going to an internist.
It's an internist, but I'm just saying with the name. I thought you said Sprinkle?
Sprinkle,
but Dr. Sprinkle. I thought you said
He wrote a whole book on a guide to masturbation and the history around masturbation. Fantastic. But what he says is
for men and women.
Yeah, for men and women.
Interesting.
And what he says is that the sex ed that we receive that's all about prevention and safety is the equivalent of you going to a cooking class and only learning how to prevent salmonella.
That's so crazy true.
That's so true.
Right? So we don't learn about pleasure, which is what I should have said in the beginning before explaining all of the different details. But
no, you tied it up in a bow.
At the essence, we're not learning about desire and arousal and pleasure. We're just learning about like the functioning.
And like being safe while you're doing it.
Safe.
That's so true. I didn't learn one thing about my actual body. I just learned in health class around like what to avoid STDs, like be careful, wear a condom, like abortion, things like that.
And there's so many myths out there too.
Yeah.
Like you can't get pregnant when you have your period, and you know what I mean?
Is it a myth that you can't get pregnant before you get your period for the first time? Is that a myth?
Oh, I didn't think before. I was thinking
No, you need
When
to
you
have
had your-
menstruated. Yeah.
Crazy. I couldn't wrap my
No,
head
a
around
woman
it.
needs to have menstruated in order to.
Yeah, that adds up. What's another myth that you hear and you're just like rolling your eyes at?
Another myth that
I also
hear.
have one that pulling out is safe.
No, there's
Yeah.
pre-cum.
Right. Oh, very good, Danielle.
Thank you, Mom.
Yeah, that is a risk for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the rhythm method. Yeah. Good luck with that.
What's the rhythm method?
Like when you kind of follow your ovulation and stuff, and you have
No,
that actually
that's
does
legit.
work.
That's
You
legit.
think so?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're only ovulating like when the sperm
yeah,
is
but you
beating
could
the egg.
be
is
off
during,
time wise a little.
no. You still have the 4 cycles of your menstruation. Girl, you wrong. Go back to health class.
Okay, well,
No, because when you're ovulating, that's when you can get pregnant,
No, I
right?
know.
And it is just a few days of the month. And today there's just better technology that tracks it more
Yeah.
accurately.
I mean,
Like the
So-
worst time to have sex is like I think it's like the week after the last day of your period.
45 years ago, I wasn't tracking anything.
You would just track how many guys you were sleeping with. Slut. I'm kidding.
But in terms of myths, I mean, I feel like we know this better now, but women have been taught that they should orgasm from penetration alone, right? And now, thankfully, there's a lot more research and conversations around it, but you need to stimulate the clitoris because even if you are in the minority that orgasms from penetration alone, it's because your clitoris is fully aroused and engorged in blood internally where that G-spot is happening and being stimulated that then you're able to reach the orgasm. So it's all tied to the clitoris, but the part that is most sensitive for us tends to be the bean, right, on the outside. And so I think women grow up feeling like they're broken or there's something wrong with them because they're not coming from penetration. And, you know, we're all growing up in a porn-ridden world where that becomes our source of sex education. And so
That's scary.
then that's especially the reference for young men, you know, and they're like, I just need to do jackhammer it and she's going to have this incredible orgasm, you know? And so
Look, that sounds
that's a
great.
huge problem because then you're coupling that with the fact that we also have shame around our genitals as women and we feel uncomfortable touching ourselves and getting to know ourselves. And so how do we advocate for our own pleasure? Right.
Yeah.
And so that to me is a really big problem. Like Freud, a problem that I have with him is that he had this whole theory that the vaginal orgasm through penetration is the mature orgasm, whereas the clitoral orgasm
what
is
does
the
he mean by
immature
that?
one, right? Like when you fully matured as a human, you should theoretically as a woman
That's
orgasm
so
through penetration.
insanely incorrect.
So we have for, a century, like been holding on to this idea that we need to come from penetration alone.
right. So
right?
people probably feel shame and confusion when they don't.
Exactly.
Wow, all roads lead back to your clitoris.
Yeah. And you
Exactly.
need like a nice TED talk out there. 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm telling you,
it's
this was
so
so educational. And there's
Thank
probably
you.
so many people that just,
Don't.
I mean, I talk about sex and I kid around and stuff, but there's so many
Same.
people that are very buttoned up that never would.
No, I'm definitely the most like out of all my friends and I are very comfortable but I've always been very open talking about sex. It's not like a weird shame. I never found like shame around it.
Okay, there you go.
And with that, go buy a vibrator. I wish we had a vibrator sponsor.
And a card deck to open
And a
up.
card deck. I would love to look at your card deck, honestly.
Yes, I'll bring it to you.
But we have to wrap, which is so sad. And this is our last podcast of our season. Thank you so much for being
I
here.
had a great time. Thank
No,
you.
this was
The
so,
best.
I feel
this
like
was so good. And you must have a very lucky husband,
I was thinking the same thing.
right?
Very
He must
lucky.
be like skipping home every night, right? Popping them in.
Yeah, it helps. It helps with maintaining the connection for sure.
What does your husband do?
Yeah, he works in finance.
Oh,
Yeah. I've actually always liked men in finance. So, because I used to work in it and I think I've always enjoyed
Yeah.
and
My
love a
husband
man
and
in a
son
vest.
both
Yeah.
work in finance.
yeah.
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 So we know that world.
We do know that world.
So that's what he does. And he gets in early. And so he's home by like 5. So we have a good stretch of time. We don't have
That's
kids.
nice.
So we have a good stretch of time to connect after work too, which is helpful.
Nice. That
I
is
know
very
you're a little late now for you. Oh, no, you're going to make your makeout session.
have
It's
an
only
event
5
after
after
you
5.
too. Oh my, wow, you have to postpone
You
your
have to go
makeout
home
sesh.
for a smooch.
Sorry, hubby. Keep it to yourself. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
We
so
really
much for
appreciate it. And I feel like I loved that conversation
Yes,
so
me
much.
too.
Where can people find you on social media
Your
or
card game?
all of those good things?
So my website, Wonderlust with an O, wonderlust.co. And then my Instagram is Natassia Miller. Natasha's Natassia.
Not Natassia, as I made that lovely mistake.
And our company's Instagram is Wonderlust in the Wild.
Love that.
Wait, why Wonderlust?
Because your largest sexual organ is your brain. So you're wondering and you're lusting.
Oh, it's so good.
So good.
And in the wild, I picture like a big bush.
bush.
But on that note,
On that note, thank you so much for listening. Like, subscribe, all those good things.